Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Beyond Dope. We're going to get started with the Serenity Prayer like we always do. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Today's thought for the day is, so there's a lot in it that I don't know if I really agree with this whole thought for the day, but pretty much it's the main point of it is am I on guard against wrong thinking, because the thinking always comes before the drinking or using or whatever we're gonna do, and what do you do to prevent that or to combat that. And I wrote down a bunch of things. Obviously the obvious answers are call a sponsor, call a friend in AA. But what do you do when those people aren't around? Do you have a support system within your family? Do you just have things that you do? Because that's going to be something that's going to be in your life forever. You're always going to have that thinking in your life. You're right. I'm 5 years in, and there are still times where it's definitely less now than it was at the beginning, but there's still times where I think maybe I can have a drink, or this would that reward system in your brain, I need to relax, and I need a drink, or I need just one won't kill me type of thing. But for me, what's worked for me is just kind of changing that reward pattern. For me, instead of wanting a drink or wanting to use, it's I'm gonna go pick my daughter up after work and go get boba or something like that. It's just changing the reward system for me. I know it sounds silly, but that's worked for me so far. But I understand, some people are just going to be, we're all our worst enemy, and we're all in our heads a lot of the time. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into it. So when I got out of rehab, I had gotten a job, and a lot of us from the rehab remained friends. We had all said that we would. There was like a group of 5 of us, and as we invited each other into each other's lives, that group grew to about 8 or 9. It seemed like every time we got together, we thought, oh, hey, what about Joe? Or what about Steve? Or what about, this person? So we stayed a lot closer, I think, than probably most groups in rehab do, which is either a really good thing for some of us or a really bad thing for others, because we were very easily influenced, and everybody in that situation was looking for an out, like, oh, so-and-so's using, and misery loves company in those situations. So a lot of people, once they started using, that meant that probably their closest friend was going to use, whether he kept using or used once and kind of learned from that. That was up for debate, and it varied by situation. But I think a lot of the time, like, what I should have took away from making so many friends in rehab was that I had the ability to make friends again, and that I was socially, I could still do that. Not necessarily take those friends with you, because for the most part, we all ended up hurting each other in one way or another, unfortunately. And then, some of us went back to rehab and maybe got it right. But most of us either died or God only knows where some of them are today. I quickly learned that what they told us in rehab was 100% true. They had said that only 2 out of about 10 of us would actually stay sober. And that is actually low, because I think only 3 of us in our pod of 30 addicts are still even alive today. So I remember everybody thinking, like, that's not true. 2 out of 10, come on. But now looking back, I mean, we were extremely naive. Everybody's dead. I mean, just everybody's gone. While I was going to IOP at CATS Outpatient Services, Amber was at Matt Talbot in Lakewood. She had done, I want to say, like another week or 2 in jail, and then they found her a bed at Matt Talbot. During which time I would take buses to take her some of her clothes, and we got to talk on the phone quite a bit, and I came to like visiting day once a week with her. We talked last time about that meeting at Matt Talbot when we basically agreed to get sober alone, focus on ourselves first, and see what happens. That is what I was doing. Well, for the most part, that's what I was doing. I wasn't focusing 100% on myself. I had a lot of friends that I was focusing on too. That was one of my big problems at first, was trying to keep myself sober along with my friends sober. And one of my other issues was chasing girls as well in the beginning, because me and Amber agreed that we were going to be alone, and I didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know what I was doing. So it created this situation where, again, like high school, we should have been thinking purely on sobriety, and I know we weren't. So when Amber got out, I was her first call from sober living. I was actually with my friends when I got that call, and I went to pick her up. She was staying at a sober home in Old Brooklyn. We would go out to eat and talk. I picked her up during my lunch a few times, and we would go to Subway. It was really nice to have her back. It kind of just started from there, where we would see each other for lunch and talk about, how sobriety was going, what was new. There was a few times where a lot of her clothes weren't fitting her because, when we're sober, we're like 60 pounds, super skinny. And she had put on some weight, same as me, so we went clothes shopping a lot, and she was really good at shopping for me. I never bought myself anything, so like we would go to Burlington, and she would pick out like 2 outfits for her, and she'd be like, oh, hey, I got this for you too, which was always perfect because I was the worst, especially back then, at buying myself clothes. I don't even think I knew what size I was until like 2019. So this was a really, really good time. We were both kind of doing our own thing, but we got together for, lunches and dinners, and we talked a lot. And whenever we saw the kids, which was usually once to twice a week, we always did that together. So when I look back on this time, it was very precious to me because we were a family. And this kind of all went to shit because I kind of drew a line in the sand. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So every once in a while, though, one of us would think we deserved a reward or, some kind of a vacation from life, I guess is the best way to put it. How you get out of work and you think, man, I really just want that beer, or whatever it is, you can't wait to get home and take a nap or whatever your little reward system is. Well, ours was that for years. And one night we decided we could have a night out drinking because we thought we could do that, which led to some Coke, then led to some H. Amber was going a different way. She liked some of the attention she was getting from her IOP group. She liked having quote-unquote friends again. And for a while, we went our separate ways. I spent most of my time during this period with the kids or putting myself in sketchy situations for her or my quote-unquote friends. Picking her up from places I shouldn't be, or picking them up from places I shouldn't have been. I got involved with someone around the same time she started dating a guy from her IOP, which was literally the one thing that we talked about was, I just want you to be happy, Amber. I don't, want you to fall into the traps of this thing. Just stay away from, guys. Stay away from other drug addicts. Stay away from guys that you might use with. That was the one thing that I tried to hammer into her damn head, and she ends up dating a guy from IOP, like everybody else. I mean, we all fall into this trap. Apparently, I don't know why, but we fucking do, and it's so stupid. And this goes back to, remember when I said rehab was like high school? I mean, this is like spot fucking on.
You're listening to Beyond Dope. New episodes available every Friday. For questions or comments, reach out to us on Facebook or email beyonddopepodcast@gmail.com.
She was dating this guy and I ended up dating this girl for literally that reason alone. I don't think I ever would have been with this girl if she didn't start dating this guy. And again, the whole high school thing comes into play. She was hurt that I drew a line in the sand with her. I was hurt that she was dating someone else. It was a big fucking mess. And I implore you to stay single. No sex, no relationships for a year, at least. When you're, well, let me go back. Only when you're, in rehab or you have an addiction problem. Otherwise, don't worry about that. Go ahead and, date and fuck and do whatever you want. But when you're in the situation that I was in, stay single, no sex, no relationships for a year. Let yourself get used to making important decisions again. That would be my biggest piece of advice to anybody going through this. And it's not just for yourself. It's for everyone involved. We hurt each other so much during this time. And not just that, we were, be careful, who you're bringing around, the people that you love, whether it's your family or your kids or it's just, we've already put these people through so much, and now we're getting sober and our lives are changing. So just make sure that it's something serious and make sure that it's something for real before you introduce them to anyone that might be important to you. Because if not, it's just going to look like a slap in the face. And I don't know why, but we all end up making this mistake early on in a rehab. Just looking at Amber back then, you could see she was using heavy again. She violated her probation and ended up going back to jail for 6 months. This was actually, believe it or not, a pretty happy 6 months in my life. And the person that I was before this, I never thought that I could say that while Amber was in jail, I had a happy life. But I was kind of learning to live on life's terms. This girl that I was seeing had this huge house, and my kids stayed with us for almost the entirety of that 6 months. Amber would call, and I would let them talk to her on the phone. The apologies I got while she was in there were extremely heartfelt. I ignored her calls for about 2 weeks, and in week 3, I decided, I remember what that was like, getting your phone calls ignored, being in jail. And I had the power to not only answer and talk to her and calm her mind, but also let her talk to the kids. And I know what I would have done, and how much I would have appreciated that if I was in that same situation. So I answered the phone, and I let her talk to them. And you could just tell by her voice and by some of the things that she said that she got it. She appreciated that. And when you're in that situation and someone lets you talk to your kids, answers the phone, puts money on your books, something like that, you don't forget stuff like that. When she got out, she was back at a sober house. And we missed each other, of course. We started slow. I would go see her at lunch, and the girl I was with, it became very complicated. So I ended up, me and the girl that I was with, we ended up breaking up, of course, and me and Amber slowly got into seeing each other again. And before long, we were back in pretty much the same situation we were always in. We would have these periods of 4 to 6 months of sobriety, and then we would do something for 2 days, then be sober for 4 months again, and then have a night out. And it went on and on and on like that for a long time. On November 18th of 2018, we went shopping at Walmart with the food card she had from her sober living house. We had about $50 left on it when we were done shopping. We knew a lot of dealers who would trade 20 or 30 for $50 off of an EBT card. 2 weeks prior to this was one of our usual, 1 week stays, locking ourselves in a hotel room to get sober. It was our deepest run yet. We had, I want to say we used for like a week straight. And to get sober, we just decided we were going to lock ourselves in at that Motel 6 in Middleburg Heights. And the lengths of sobriety during this time in our lives went from 4 months to 2, then to 1, and then it was weeks, and we were using every week or 2. We had a normal guy that we went through over off of 93rd in Cleveland. He told us to come through. When we got there, he wasn't answering. We had a different guy that we went, I don't know, we only went through him maybe twice, maybe 3 times. He lived right over there, only about 5 minutes from where we were. We called him, and he agreed to trade for the EBT card, and we got a 20. On our way home from getting the 20, the other guy called us. If we would have just answered and gone through him, who knows where we would be. And those are the questions that will haunt you for the rest of your life sometimes. Anyways, we got home to my parents and went right upstairs. About 2 hours after we got home, my mom called up. She heard me making funny noises. When she went upstairs, she saw me laying naked on my bed. This kind of scared her away. And she went back downstairs. 20 minutes later, she needed the keys to my car to move it. This is where she came up again. When she turned the corner to get the key, she could hear me struggling to breathe and see Amber unresponsive on the floor. She immediately called 911. I was Narcaned 8 times and revived. I don't remember being awake at all, but I'm told I was. Amber was dead. I kept sleeping. I kept just slipping back into respiratory failure. They had to place me into a induced coma and pack me in ice to get my fever down. My body was shutting down. The bag I peed into was black due to my body breaking down my muscle tissue because I was dead. I woke up from my coma on 11/27, 2018. One day before my brother Evan's birthday. Almost 7 years ago to this day, the dreams I had were intense. I couldn't tell where reality began and my coma dreams ended. I get sick, honestly. I get sick when I think about this part because it was 2 days before I asked about Amber. Out of nowhere, I thought, where's Amber? That was when I started calling people, and nobody would tell me flat out. When my mom said I'm on my way up, rather than just give me an answer, I knew she was gone. I didn't know how, I didn't know, but I knew she was gone. Amber's parents had to come to the hospital to have me sign off on releasing her body. I was still in ICU and not able to attend the funeral. You know, it's the strangest thing because I just got back from Marymount Hospital. My mom had had to have her gallbladder removed, and that's where I wrote some of my notes for the day. And literally 7 years ago to the day, I was in that hospital, that exact hospital, waking up from my coma and going through all this. So it's kind of like a full circle moment. One day I'm waking up from a coma there. The next, 7 years later, I'm making my podcast notes while my mom goes into gallbladder surgery, right? At the same hospital. But it was obviously a very hard time on me. I could barely walk. I was walking with a cane, and they had to kind of teach me how to walk again with a walker. Between just the toll that it took on my body and my mental health was insane. They moved me to St. Vincent and worked with me on walking again and tried to keep me sober. I ended up leaving St. Vincent downtown after I was there for almost 3 weeks. once I got back to my parents, I didn't want to be there at all. The girl I saw for a while during that same period offered to put me up at her house while I healed. I could barely walk, like I said, but the emotional shit was 100 times worse than the physical. I continued to get high in between stints of working and counseling. I hated myself. I constantly thought about all the decisions that led to her death and how if just one went differently, she would still be here. It tortured me. It was a long time before I could truly forgive myself for some of the things and realize that other things weren't my fault. I mean, there was a time when suicide seemed like a great option. There was a time when I thought that I was cheated out of the perfect death, which is insane to say, looking back on it. Grief counseling, anybody who's going through anything, I know we all think we know everything. We don't. we just don't. Grief counseling helped me immensely, and the methadone clinic, CAAA, helped beyond measure. And of course, all my family, my support group, my brothers, my brother, my sister, all my friends, and my kids, eventually got me to where I was a year sober, and I just built off of that. And if I could do it coming from the situation that I was in, then anybody can do it. And that's truthfully why I put this story out there, because all the deaths and all the grief, and we always think we have an excuse of why it's okay that we do these terrible things that we do. I mean, we have to be able to look ourselves in the mirror at the end of the day, right? But I'm telling you, just do the next right thing, and keep working whatever program you're working. And if you're not working a program, find one and work it. And just because it's not their program doesn't mean it's going to be yours. All right? So just find a program and work it. It doesn't have to be the one that everybody else works. There's a million ways to do this. Pick one and stick to it. Telling this story to you has been extremely therapeutic for me, and getting some messages and comments and emails from some of you has been just the privilege of my life. Thank you all so much for your support. I'm going to be doing a few more episodes of some interviews. We're going to kind of call that season 2. But this is it for my story, and I hope it helped you in some way. If you guys have any questions, please reach out. If anybody needs any help in the Cleveland area, please reach out. Till next time, put one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. Thanks, guys.